All right, it's time now for our next presenter, Sophia. Ron, if want to make sure that she gets mic'd. Okay. She is originally from Summit, New Jersey, is a senior at Lehigh University, will be graduating in May 2023 with a Bachelor of Science in Business and Economics and a major in Finance. She has a current major GPA of 3.88, and she's accepted a full-time offer at S&P Global Ratings. And I do want to make a specific comment that she is my first ever undergraduate student to present at CACRL over the last 6 years. So please join me in welcoming Sophia Piron.
Thank you. Thank you. Just this one. Okay. All right, great. Well, thank you for that introduction, Professor Zachariah. Throughout this presentation, Trudos will highlight the importance of data sharing, maintaining seamless integrity of that data, and the evolution and impact of ESG on the global supply chain. So, unfortunately, Paul could not be with us here today, but just a brief background on Paul. He is the co-founder of Trudos, which created a patented solution to providing blockchain verification to content and chain of custody to the supply chain. Paul graduated from Lehigh in 1975 with a degree in mechanical engineering. Paul was also elected into the Lehigh Penske Athletic Hall of Fame in 1998 in recognition for his successful baseball career. He played in the major leagues from 1976 to 1984. Most recently, in 2020, Paul was named one of the greatest 100 Angel players in the 60-year club of the MLB. I would also like to introduce Keith Sparrow, also a 1975 Lehigh graduate with a degree in industrial engineering. Keith has had 43 years of business experience, including being the founder and president of DP&C Enterprises. Other notable career experiences include Colgate-Palmolive, the Clorox Company, and Office Max. Currently, he teaches supply chain management curriculum at Union County and Raritan Valley Community Colleges. So the main problem here. The main problem is the growing debate over the influence of ESG, environmental, social, and governance, where there appears to be a disconnect between the managers of funds and ESG proponents. The critique of managers of these ESG funds is that it mainly limits companies' profits and their ability to compete, whereas ESG proponents suggest corporations willing to make decisions to benefit the environment and society will likely lead to long-term realized gains and more sustainable firms in general. In an essay published this past September by the Wall Street Journal, Michael Lipton, a credible and prominent corporate attorney, contested that companies have a legal responsibility to consider these long-term goals. Lipton specifically said, "We continue to believe it is essential that boards operate under a governance model that permits the consideration of ESG principles and sustainable investment strategies." In another Wall Street Journal published on November 2nd, just a few days ago, it aimed to discuss how investors can make sense of these ESG ratings and why they're so varied widely. One explanation for this was a lack of company disclosure. While the Sustainable Accounting Standards Board has developed standards to disclose this ESG data, it is currently optional. If regulators enforced mandatory reporting standards for ESG data, then metrics can be standardized and all of a company's performance in regards to ESG could be easily measured and intuitively compared. As a broad overview, supply chain sustainability is the management of ESG factors across the supply chain. Factors include, but are not limited to, the raw material sourcing and extraction to a product's use and the end of a product's life cycle. There's a pressure now more than ever for shareholders to address this sustainability, but supply chains are so complex that nobody can tackle sustainability alone. In a recent 2022 article from Fortune, states that shareholders are putting more pressure on companies to address ESG issues. Among Russell 3000 companies, 348 proposals were filed on environmental and social issues, and 158 of these proposals were voted on. For reference, that is a significant increase from 2020 and 2021, which just goes to show that there's not only sustainable and ESG issues being discussed, but also a pressure to address these issues as well. Despite these efforts, however, in order for large-scale change to occur, it requires collaboration with the right partners, third-party verification processes, supplier training programs, appropriate technology, and dynamic communication that enables data to be shared seamlessly and with integrity. So, ESG is important beyond just sustainable practices. It has become a core component to a brand's reputation. Major companies are focused on that brand. The firm's brand name represents years of value and investment in order to convey that value, quality, and performance to the end customer. Attention to ESG potentially polishes this brand reputation to the public, and in turn, the public has a transparent perception of the company's values. Firms that view sustainability as a critical factor in business evaluation in terms of efficiency, responsiveness, and reliability are able to also show these core values as well. As we have seen in the past few years, the supply chain has shown sensitivity, starting with supply chain pressures with the 2020 COVID pandemic to geopolitical conflicts such as the Russia and Ukraine war. The need for a responsive and efficient supply chain is ever more important. Increased demand has also led to pricing premiums. The efficiency of logistics and capacity allocation was compromised by an increased demand, and therefore this disrupted supply as leading shippers would have to expedite goods to satisfy these demands at the cost of premium rates. So this actually isn't the right slide, but if this was, it would say, yeah, it's okay. We're going to pretend there's a picture here, but so if you would look at the graphic would show an exponential chart of ESG assets under management. In 2010, you would see from the graph that there would be just about 20 trillion ESG assets under management, and it would grow exponentially into 2020, where there is just over 100 trillion ESG assets under management. So the point to this is that ESG has grown exponentially in importance and will continue to grow. There has been a growing movement for ESG and firms to quantify their metrics for the entire supply chain. As a result, it's crucial to have capital investment by a firm to advance products, footprint expansion, and technology, and be able to convey corporate citizenship and good citizenship to the public. Better synchronized supply chains as well, aligned with sustainability goals, are essential to reducing emissions targets. C-suite and board of directors should put pressure to achieve these and support these initiatives as well. Yet, the main takeaway here is metrics. If you can't measure success, how can you improve it? To give tribute to Paul and his successful baseball career, let's use this as an example. Say Paul and his teammates are seeking to improve their batting averages. Yet, if there's no recorded data or statistics regarding this, how can they even begin to improve? Again, if you can't measure it, you can't improve it, as the integrity of data and statistics are critical. There are a variety of environmental factors firms are focusing on well. To highlight a few, fuel consumption directly impacting climate change and financial performance are being measured. Additionally, there has been a focus on packaging towards reusable materials and efforts to mitigate dumping into waste streams and landfills as well. Regardless, the stage has been set for large-scale shippers and transportation carriers to commit to sustainable practices throughout their supply chain and process and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The graphic here is a study conducted by PitchBook where they asked respondents across 17 categories which were investment areas of importance to them. The two highest areas of importance polled by these respondents were energy and climate, which both polled 45%. Interestingly enough, both of these areas had a fair number of funds available for investment and significant investment opportunities to absorb large sums of capital. As you can see from this, the coverage within the ESG polled factors is very widespread. While agriculture and water were the next two highest, categories such as employment and education were on the lower range of the scale. This poll not only shows interest areas of investment, but also perhaps a lack thereof. In our view, firms should not only want to be perceived as good citizens, but more so have a duty to behave in the best interest of their communities beyond just these investment opportunities. So, again, there is no graphic, but this graphic on the screen would have shown a global measure of advanced economies in developing countries. As many supply chains stretch to third world and developing countries, it's extremely important for firms to commit to have an emphasis on sustainable labor practices, employment records, and earning power transparency. Additionally, there needs to be a heightened concern of firms and their labor practices and supply chain operations occurring in these developing countries as well. So firms that are able to comply with local, state, and federal law shed a positive light on the company as well. Firms must be open to public scrutiny and maintaining positive light and maintaining positive media and public relations as well. A fiduciary duty of a firm is to provide full transparency of financial information, their business performance, and act in the best interest of their stakeholders. So, maintaining the highly confidential information and critical data is ever more important. This is especially important regarding the protection from ransomware and data breaches as we all operate in a highly technological environment. ESG is a core component to business sustainability. Being able to generate consistent cash flows is core to any business that seeks success and long-term sustainability as well. No firm can sustain itself without generating consistent returns and consistent cash flows. According to a recent publication from McKinsey, ESG is linked to cash flows in 5 ways. 1, facilitating top-line growth. 2, reducing costs. 3, minimizing regulatory and legal interventions. 4, increasing employee productivity. And 5, optimizing investment and capital expenditures. It's not new information that the way towards ESG integration and regulation is a highly debated topic. Opinions tend to vary based on geographical location, business type, financial reasons, and many other factors. For example, North American investment firms have a greater desire to satisfy client demand than, say, in the EU. Additionally, institutional investors may consider climate-type change of investments more important due to the financial success in their contribution in that regard as well. All of this aside, the main important point here is that investors have a fiduciary duty to satisfy client demand, and that is financial in nature. Companies develop ESG strategies for their suppliers and use a highly secured and immutable platform for this information because the global supply chain is interconnected and complex. With verifiable, immutable information available to firms, they're able to make decisions with confidence that allow for information recall in a timely manner, improve the corporate brand reputation, enhance risk management strategies and efficiencies. The driving forces behind these strategies for suppliers, vendors, and immutable information platforms stems from a lack of robust ESG data. There's concerns about the firm's financial performance or their sacrificing returns, the complex regulator landscape, a short-term investment focus, and the fact that ESG could breach fiduciary duty. So this picture shows what an ESG template, an ESG report would look like on TrueDOS's platform. As you can see in point 1, it is titled Lehigh's Supply Chain ESG Template. A template is built for each customer based on the industry, suppliers, and sub-suppliers they are tracking. Below that, in the circle, it shows a variety of folders and subfolders that are completely customizable based on the information that is gathered for that company. The circle marked users and groups allows participants to have their own level of access. For someone at the parent company, they may have access to all of the folders. However, a particular sub-supplier may only have access to one specific folder pertaining to their company and their information they input. Reporting is next, and it is essential and robust as the blockchain essentially fingerprints each of these documents in the template, and as we all know, each fingerprint is unique. These documents are not only unique, but under reports, information is gathered and generated that shows who has viewed the documents, for how long, and other information that is valuable to prove that review has taken place. This not only preserves all of the documents, but also allows for tracking of suppliers and sub-suppliers as they're submitting information in real time. The next circle is number 3, and it's a search bar. In this demonstration, we decided to search for sustainable. So what this did is it inputted and outputted all of the documents within the template that had the word sustainable. All of these documents are made 100% text searchable, and any type of information is able to be searched, such as item numbers, key phrases, and a word just like sustainable. So to continue with this example, this is from the previous slide, this is what document verification would look like on the TrueDOS URL. And it is created so that each company will have a page that looks like this of their own. In box 1, it shows the file name, and next to it in number 2, it shows the cryptographic hash associated with that document. The cryptographic hash is essentially a long strand of letters and numbers that are mathematically impossible to be cracked, and it is enhanced by the blockchain environment. The green icon number 3 shows validity and notarization by the blockchain. To the right of this box, it shows information about the document itself, such as who added the document, when it's been notarized by the blockchain, and so on and so forth. So in this example, it shows that Paul Hartzell added the document and it was notarized by the blockchain at the specific time. Below that, in the red icon, this is showing another cryptographic hash that does not report notarization. This tells us that this particular document has never been seen by the system. And while all documents have hashes, this document's particular hash has not been identified and therefore suggests it's unoriginal. Even the most minor of changes to a document, such as one small word, would not report notarization. The verification process and the ability to even recognize a very small change from an original file is important, as it suggests that there may be changes to the document either in favor of or to discredit the information on that file. Either way, the need for trusted data and preservation of information is ever more critical. With TrueDOS's patented distributed ledger technology, it enables suppliers to capture information on a shipping dock with, say, a smartphone, or the more sophisticated supplier to use EDI connections to instantly separate data and convert it into an easy-to-read and text-searchable program and format. This blockchain-based technology ensures information is immutably preserved and instantly verified by if the document is the original or if any alterations have taken place. The key to this transparency and widespread use is that it comes from verifiable and immutable information. Trust is created and maintained by companies, their suppliers, and sub-suppliers by sharing data that cannot be altered without detection. This information includes dates, times of events, and GPS coordinates. The process of using a distributed ledger captures all of the activity by individual participants and makes all of this information available to the company. Files, images, and records can be viewed by any web browser assuming proper credentials. All internal review is also recorded as to show what, when, and who has viewed it and for how long. And all content of the ESG template can be instantly verified at truedos.com as the original unaltered document by the cryptographic hash, which has been secured by the patented blockchain technology. As a final takeaway, we seek to find a solution to this business dilemma and the growing debate of ESG between investors and fund managers and the financial implications this has. In our view, we would argue that ESG is complementary to brand, reputation, and sound business practices. We would also argue that ESG is here to stay. These policies and processes allow for sustained growth and continuous improvement. However, for this sustained growth and continuous improvement to occur, there must be metrics, as once you can measure it, you can improve it. Thank you.
Questions? You gotta be kidding me. Don't be shy.
There's a question over there.
Hi. There have been efforts on the part of some state governments to limit the use of ESG. Do you see those having a broader impact? Do you take that very seriously as a threat to the broader field of ESG, or is that just a minor thing in a few right-leaning states?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely something that, as ESG develops over time, will be continued to be monitored. Keith, if you have any input on that, it might be more beneficial.
There's a natural conflict on this whole initiative, so to speak. You know, this whole initiative of ESG, how it affects corporate profits, how it affects governance.
Put all over there. I was like, guys, it's only coffee.
How governance deals with private companies. There's a big issue there associated with that, and it hasn't been resolved. It's a dilemma. It's a dilemma of, you know, how much importance an ESG becomes to a company's brand, and how does that affect a company's profitability. So it's a complex issue involving stakeholders, stockholders, government, and business itself. Ultimately, it gets resolved through metrics. And those metrics become quantifiable and they become indisputable. You know, as what was talked about at the panel here just before lunch, metrics are really important. Data integrity is very important. So the metrics will resolve itself in terms of how important ESG is. But at the current time, that's undefined. And there are many ways that different companies are looking at those metrics and how to accumulate that information. So it's in a process. But ultimately, ESG is not a new term. This goes back to brand management. Every brand name company, from Air Products to Braun to Frito-Lay's potato chips, has wanted to be a good community citizen. So this just gives an acronym to being a good community citizen, but the importance of it needs to be measured as it relates to environment, society, and governance. Another question.
Yeah, I have a question about, so it sort of in response to the question that was just asked, do you think that these ESG is that debate more strongly, is there more opposition to that at a public company as opposed to a privately held company? And I only say that because as someone working for a privately held company for a long time, I get the sense that they can choose to take the long view, whereas publicly traded companies tend to be pushed by the market to look at quarterly and, you know, so forth, whereas a privately held company can make those types of investments in a longer, with a longer view.
So, you know, with private companies, as you know, decisions come quicker. And in private companies, if the owner buys into the whole principle, it moves pretty quick. You know, my experience in working in private companies, my own included, is I always use the term there are owners and then there are others. So if you're an owner, you're going to move it forward. So I think it tends to move at the desire of the owner. In public companies, I think it's a harder sell because you have multiple stockholders who've invested their money in that. For example, Exxon. There was recent move by an activist group called Engine One. Some of you may be familiar with that, Engine One. They came in with a whole ESG type of approach. Now, Exxon is an oil producer. You know, they're public enemy number one as far as environmentals are concerned. Engine One was able to gain 2 board seats as far as Exxon was concerned. So now there is this internal conflict going on in terms of, do we use our capital to increase oil production, or do we spend that money in terms of shareholder buybacks and making environmental initiatives? So to answer your question, from my standpoint, it's much harder in public companies because you've got more people involved in that decision-making process, and you've got a more variety of people's money at risk than in a private company.
All right, very good. Sophia, fabulous job.
Thank you.